Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's a Friday afternoon and I'm joined by Brian Degnan. Always an absolute pleasure, Brian. And one or two things to catch up on since you were last on. How are you feeling about Sunday? Let's start with a bit of football. How are you feeling about Sunday?
No, I can't wait. It's as we say, it's been quite a week, but I'm really looking forward to the game actually, purely based on Wednesday's performance, which I thought was probably certainly our best performance of the season. I think probably the best performance since Munich. So that gives me a good feeling about Sunday. I still have that degree of trepidation because this season and recently we've not shown up well in the big games, so to speak. But we have got a big name interim manager and a big game-minded manager. So I'm pretty confident ahead of it in a way it actually wouldn't have been this time last week, could you ask?
See, that's interesting, Brian. You wouldn't have been feeling as confident had the changes not happened. See, I find that really interesting indeed, because I would suggest, and I'm not going to labour the fact that we got here and it wasn't ideal the way we got here, the way we got to that point, the way we got to the point of you thinking, you know what, I'm going in on Sunday. Now, there's obviously the cliched new manager bounce. It's a wee bit more than that though, Brian. It's not just about changing the old guard to try and give us some kind of an energy, because we'd lost that. We'd looked really, really flat, out of ideas, possession-based football, side to side, horseshoe of death. We needed something to change, absolutely. But I think there's an added dynamic in the fact that it's Martin O'Neill that's come in. What have you made this week of Martin, who I think the last time you saw him, he was ruffling your hair?
That's right.
Yep.
Actually, the last time we saw him, I was getting a hug and I'd made a joke about being like Sean Maloney. And there's actually a picture of me and him together, and because of the size. But I paraphrase the song, "What a difference a week makes." 168 little hours. I mean, last Friday, you and I were talking, and I said about the game against Graz, and I said, it felt like a bit of a turning point. We'll see how we got on against Hearts, but this is going to make or break the season. And then the Celtic world just exploded and went on fire on Monday, and then Martin O'Neill's back in charge. So it's really been quite an insane week for a bunch of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get to. But just on the Martin O'Neill factor, it's the most excited I've been for a game for quite a while. Not just because of the curiosity factor and because everything that's been going on, and because it really did feel like a must-win, which at this stage of the season you don't often say. But the fact to see Martin O'Neill back in the touchline again, I felt inspired watching it. Seeing Hughes jump about, I was yes, and you sort of seen his energy and that old run up to the touchline, the collar up, the football boots back on. It was class, and I must have been about 18 when Martin O'Neill came into the club, 17, 18, something like that. And it was just kind of surreal and sort of brilliant. But it felt like the players felt that. Now, I don't know how many players even are aware of Martin O'Neill, because a lot of my young guys are come from different places. But obviously what he's got is he's still got that fire, that sort of, he brings that out in people, because the enthusiasm the team showed was tremendous. Like, it was very direct. It just kept going. Really looked as if they were all fighting for it. None more so than Sriracha, by the way, who I want to talk about in a wee bit, because I thought he was tremendous.
Yeah,
really, really good. So yeah, it was really infectious, and I say that's why my opinions changed a bit about Sunday in a degree, because obviously post the Hearts game, everyone was deflated. Not just the fact we get beat; it was the manner of it. And like I said with the Dundee game, after the Dundee game, I said I wasn't hugely surprised, actually, the way we played. I was gutted, but I wasn't surprised. After Glasgow, I thought, right, this is a big game now against Hearts, and we absolutely fluffed the lines. Apart from a 20-minute period in the first half, we were pretty awful. And I saw a few people saying Hearts weren't great. We were the better team. I disagreed. I thought Hearts dominated pretty much the game. I know we had a few chances, but we didn't have a shot after the 38th minute or something. So after that game, I'm going, never mind the game on Sunday. The Falkirk game is going to be hard. Because Falkirk have played well. They've had some decent results recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, this could be a tough couple of weeks. But I've got the new manager bounce with Martin back, and I'm going Sunday. I don't think it's going to be a canter by any means, but because I think they're actually they look as if they've I suppose, maybe half of them improving the season are having, but they've done all right the past couple of games. So they'll feel quietly confident. But we do have the better squad, we do have the better players, and if they're motivated and they've got that sort of fight and sort of drive that they seem to show on Wednesday, then I think it's going to be a good day, a beautiful Sunday, so to speak.
Well, that would be nice. Happy Halloween to everybody, whether or not you celebrate it or not. If you probably didn't pre-2012, you do now. But I think that when we're looking ahead to Sunday, I do want to talk about some of the individual players, so actually being one of them. We'll start off with the Martin O'Neill effect, because you mentioned there one word that stood out, infectious, right? I think when you're talking about mood and energy, both are infectious, Brian, right? So you think about most jobs in the world, right? And you can get away if you're at a level, you can get away with phoning them in. Just to, there's a lot of jobs you can just phone. You can turn up, you can get past, without putting too much or exerting too much effort into them. I think sport is completely different. So with regards to the mood and the energy and how that can be infectious one way or another. I mean, bad mood in an office but you can still phone it in and get past all your deadlines and get everything done. I think when you bring it into sport, it is completely different, as is the difference of that mood being lifted. And I think that coming in, it might have happened with any other coach. It certainly wouldn't have happened if Brendan Rodgers leaves his position, Brian, and then John Kennedy and Strachan turn up for training the next day. And it's like, let's revert back to what we were doing before. You would not have got the bounce. You would not have got the raised mood. Nothing. You needed change at that point. And Martin O'Neill has come in. Now, I don't think for a second, going through all the different occasions where we've had the absolute privilege and honour of speaking to Martin O'Neill, I didn't think for a second that he had any designs to get back into any role in football. None whatsoever in relation to management, right? But he's here. And I'm thinking it's came as a surprise to him as much as it has to you, me, and everybody else in the comment section. Monday night was bizarre. It was a warped evening of wondering what was parody and what was real. Turned out it was all real, even the statement. So Martin O'Neill is in the dugout, and I think it gives you that extra element going into this game where you've had two teams with two managerial changes under different circumstances, right? You've got Martin to roll, you've got Rodgers to Martin O'Neill. And you go into that game and you think, well, O'Neill's been through this. He's been through this so many times, this type of occasion, be that semi-finals, finals, the big derby atmosphere. He's been through that, the build-up, what it takes, how to calm down the dressing room, how to make sure that you're prepared mentally as well as physically. And I think that's a huge advantage. I really do. I think it's a huge advantage. In many ways, Brendan Rodgers had been in a bit of a rut when it comes to the derby games. Last week, I was in Glasgow, so driving home, Brian, I'm listening to Acsom just like everybody else is in the comment section today. As a fan, just listening with no means whatsoever of contributing. And Patrick McGilp and John Hughes were talking about the very fact that we stopped winning big games. We have stopped winning big games of football under Brendan Rodgers. And the question was posed, when was the last big game we actually won? And I'm thinking in the back of my head, League Cup final, probably, a one-off game. And then the caveat was without it going to penalties or extra time. And then I'm thinking, wow, way back, Leipzig, last big game we won. So it's one of these situations, Brian, where we were in a rut. We had to get out of that. And a big part of that, not only the performance, was the mood. We looked so flat, didn't we? And I think not only is it giving the team a lift, it's giving the fans a lift. And in respect to everything else that's happening off the park, I mean, there were protests before the game on Wednesday night. But it has given, I feel, the fans a huge lift. And I don't think any of us are getting that carried away, because it's coming through here in the comments, only Falkirk. I get it. But can you imagine we didn't get the result? Can you imagine we didn't have that Springer step on the Thursday after that performance?
The people are saying only Falkirk. Falkirk are doing all right this season, and they went to Ibrox and got a draw, beat Dundee that we couldn't do. They've been doing all right, and they play decent football. So given the way we were playing, it wasn't going to be an easy game. We made it look fairly easy, but I think that was purely because of the Martinelli effect. I really do. I think that we can underplay this and say, oh, it's only this or only that or whatever. And listen, last week people were saying it's only Hearts. I had said on the podcast, I'd said at the start of the season, I think Hearts will finish second. And then last week I was saying, I do think we're in a title race because depending on what happened in that Sunday, I think they're a decent side. And there was a few people in the comments telling me I was talking rubbish and no do any sort of football playing would take Hearts seriously. And then they battered us and they're 8 points ahead. So, there's a tendency to say it's only Dundee, it's only Falkirk, it's only whoever. You still need to win them. And you need to win them with a bit of flair and a bit of style and a bit of desire. I spoke last week and I said that the most disappointing thing for me during the recent months has been that when you put on that jersey, you should feel like a giant. It should be a prerequisite to run, fight, have energy. Even if you're not playing well, just keep going. You're playing for Celtic. And that I felt was missing a bit. And I saw a lot of that back on Wednesday. And again, look, it's only one game, so we'll see how Sunday goes. But I think that it's really important. And the other, just on Martinelli again, I was a wee bit annoyed. Some people were talking about his press conference and they're saying, Martinelli was in public speaker mode and some of his jokes were a bit cringy. And it was winding me up anyway because I love him, right? But I was also saying, well, hold on. There's no way this man's coming back to lose football games. I don't care how chirpy and how pleasant and how relaxed he is nowadays. If we'd been playing rubbish against Falkirk at half time, he'd have been rinsing those players. Because what you can't, no matter what age he is, that's a man that wants to win games and will not allow sort of half measures. It just won't. It doesn't matter what age he is or how long he's not been a manager for. So, and you saw that. You could see him on the touchline. You could see him going for it. And I think you saw the reaction. So, you're right. It's giving the fans a boost. It can't disguise some of the shambles that's going on. But I think what it allows people to do is, for the first time in a while, sort of go, right, we know the club's a bit of a mess, but let's just get excited about the game of football and try and separate the two as much as possible. And I think that's been a bit of a weight lifted for a lot of people.
Oh, massively. Absolutely massively. Yeah. Obviously, the only downside of everything that's happened this week, I mean, we could have came on today and there's a change of manager, Brian, and we could have spoke about that. You and I could have agreed or disagreed. I'm not sure what camp you would have been in relation to Rodgers leaving. But I just think the shadow of that statement was very, very unfortunate. We've done it to death. We've spoken about it. I've given my views on it. I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's 100% true. This is the thing when I put out on my socials that shouldn't have gone out on an official Celtic channel. It's not about how true or valid it is. It's the fact it shouldn't have gone out. We had made the managerial change, Brian. We'd made the announcement officially. By the way, the results are out of the survey, which we'll be touching on as well. They'd made the official, the bland, thanks for your time, bye-bye. We'd done all that, right? No need for the follow-up. That was my point. But it's pretty clear that the statement followed by his appearance at Celtic Park on Wednesday, followed by a few other changes. Can somebody confirm in the comments, it's been a busy week, can someone confirm, has it been confirmed that Chris McCart has left the building? I'm just going to wait to see if some of these comments come through. Chris McCart is no longer at Celtic. So there's been changes made in the academy, in the dugout, and there's been a lot of people talking around the changes in the boardroom. Whether or not that happens, I'm not quite sure if it will. To be honest with you, Brian, people talking about new board members, potential board members being in the board area of the game. I've got it on good authority. That was not who we believed it was. That was not the ex-CEO of Leicester City, but in actual fact, it was Sharon Brown who's been on our board. Maybe it's no surprise that many Celtic fans don't know what she looks like. Sharon Brown. It's a Celtic board member. Who is Chris McCart? Chris McCart took over from Tommy Burns as the head of academy at Celtic in 2006. And when we talk about the academy, Brian, on here, we do it a lot. We've always done it, because I'm of the view that your academy, if it's functioning, right? If your academy is functioning, you bring in a couple of graduates into the first team squad every season. That doesn't mean to say they're going to play, Brian, but you bring in 2 graduates every single year from all the players that have been through the system, right? Up to the point, let's say, of 18. Let's use that as an age. All the players that have been at Celtic since they were 8, right up to the age of 18, and only two of them from that group make the step up to the first team squad. Now, that'd be better than what we've been doing, right? And then from there, obviously, you'll find out whether or not they've got the minerals to make it as a first-team player, Brian. We've not been doing it, and it's been failing for a long, long time. And there's a whole discussion on this, which we will be having on This Is Acsom in the coming weeks in relation to where we are with the academy. But it's not been working. And Chris McCart has overseen the dysfunctional academy since 2006. And during that time, and this will form part of our show in a couple of Fridays, we've not produced enough players. I mean, the ones that are in and around the first team squad right now, fantastic, but there's a huge gap between the likes of even Tony Ralston and Colby Donovan. There's a huge gap of players who have not come through. And I know that there's caveats, and I know that loads and loads of players have left for richer leagues, let's just say. Brian, that's happened. We know that. We've got to accept it. But the academy was not functioning properly. And I was informed over the last couple of days that Chris McCart's gone. I knew that he was leaving at the end of the season to be replaced by Stevie Hamill. And I've heard that he's gone. So it would be good if someone could confirm that. It's not, I don't believe, been on the website yet. Clydebank reckons he's still with the club. We'll see. It took them a while to announce that John Kennedy had left as well. One thing's for sure, Brian. Big changes afoot at Celtic. Staying on the Martin O'Neill subject before we move on to Maloney et al. What does the future hold for Martin O'Neill and Celtic beyond this fixture at the weekend, beyond the interim period that Martin was stressing is the only period he'll be here? Do you believe that he will remain at the club? Because I'm getting a sense that might make sense. And not necessarily as a first-team manager, but it might make sense to have Martin O'Neill at the club. I mean, I don't know if an executive position would suit him or some kind of head of department would suit him. What do you make of the future for Martin?
So there's a lot to unpack there. So we'll start with Martin O'Neill first. I saw a bit of chatter about maybe potential director of football role or that sort of thing. I don't see it. I think Martin will be back for a few games, or a few weeks, and then get a new manager in, and then ride off into the sunset. Maybe some sort of ambassador role or something like that. But I don't see him coming in as any sort of, official capacity to have a real meaningful impact at the club at that level. Just purely because I don't know if he would fancy it. Director of football, as much as we all love Martin, he's from a different era of football. I'm not sure that's going to necessarily apply to him, so I don't necessarily see that. Just on a couple of comments I saw popping up, so someone was asking, since I'm happy Martin O'Neill's back, are we going to thank and give Dermot Desmond some credit? No, is the answer. So there you go. That's just in case there's anybody getting excited. And Paddy Lavery, yes, it's Jerry Taylor's fault, and thanks.
It's always Jerry's fault.
It's always Jerry's fault. I'm convinced of it. My thoughts on the statement, I'll just refer to Big Yogi's thoughts on Wednesday, because it was incredible. I think he really summed up. So I can't really add anything to that. So if you wouldn't mind, just look at his and pretend it's me saying it. But the one thing I would say, that there's 2 points actually on it. One, it was incredibly cowardly at Dermot Desmond to do it via Celtic. Because he wanted to make that statement, that's his prerogative. Fill your boots, say what you like. I don't care. But to do it through the official platform, because what that means is if Rodgers does want to take any action, he has to take it against the club.
Yeah.
And Dermot knows he won't. So that's a coward's way of doing it. It's basically standing behind your big mate and shouting at somebody. That's what it is. speaking of cowardly, the fact that Michael Nicholson or Peter Lawwell, chairman and CEO of Celtic Football Club, allowed a shareholder to make a personal attack via their website officially is a disgrace. And if anyone thinks they're still fit for purpose after that, after basically getting told to sit down and shut up while Dermot takes control, they need a word with ourselves. It was absolutely shocking. So that's 2 points on the statement. I don't need to say any more because it's been talked to death. The other thing I thought was really poor though was John Kennedy just either getting sacked or released or without a buy a leave.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't matter if people like him, love him, or hate him, or whatever, right? The guy's been there 27 years. He's had chances to move on. He's been loyal to the club. I think he's done his best. Is his best been good enough? It depends on your perspective. I don't know how he does. And I do think it's the right time for him to go. I think we need as much a clean slate as possible when times get like this. But to not even acknowledge it, to not even say, John Kennedy, he's been here for a long time. Thanks very much for everything. Great servant to the club. Your best wishes. I think it's really poor and really petty. And I think it reeks of he's took Brendan's side and they took the nip with him. And I think that's absolutely appalling. Because we as a club should be better than that. The pettiness should all be secondary. It doesn't matter what happens behind the scenes, but publicly we should be thanking these guys who show loyalty to the club, regardless of whether, you know, they've been great or no. That's kind of irrelevant. So I think that's worth mentioning as well. That I just think that, you know, to not even acknowledge the guy, I thought was really, really poor and just showed a real lack of class. And again, it goes back to that cowardly thing with Nicholson and Law, because probably they've wanted to do it. They've been told to shut up and sit down and go and play with that in the corner and draw a picture for Dermot because they're not doing anything else, to be honest.
You used the word I find quite interesting, cowardly, because that was the word Brendan used when he was talking about the story that ran in the Sun, and he was asked about that. He says cowardly, and the club should investigate it and he should get emptied. It's obviously not happened. It was also interesting when the sack the board's chant started. He was asked about that. He says that normally results in the manager getting sacked. And that's exactly what has happened. Let's bring in some of the comments. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Always an absolute pleasure to chat Celtic. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Kevin Graham. There's been a lot of people in the comment section. It's where is Kev? Have you fallen out? Because this is what happens online. You just, it runs wild, Brian. The rumour mill runs wild. Doesn't matter if it's true. Just throw it out there. It's fine. Right? No, me and Kev are still buddies. Kev's just dealing with other stuff right now, and he'll be back when he's ready. He's having a wee break.
An Acsom legend. A great guy as well. He
absolutely is. Big shout out to Fred Williams, who's supporting the channel. Thank you, and hail to you as well, Fred. We've also got Fiona Riley. Sorry, not Fiona. Sorry. I made a mistake there with my bad eyesight. I shouldn't read them out before they appear on the big screen, Brian. I'm confident we will see a tram with more self-belief playing fast attacking football on the week. Sorry, a team on the weekend. That it could have been a tram. There's been a lot of talk in the survey about better rail links and all this kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm having a nightmare with this comment. Let's start again. I'm confident we will see a team with more self-belief playing fast attacking football on the weekend. That's the huge difference. The slow possession-based game has been so stale since last season. Now, I want to pick up on this, right? Because it was almost like we got to a point, Brian, where unless you played some kind of style of possession-based football, right? Unless you played out the back and your goalie could play as a sweeper keeper and your two centre-halves had more of the ball than anybody else in the park, it was almost as if, you know, football snobs look down their nose at you as if you're a dinosaur if you don't sign up to this style of play. And what I was talking about yesterday is that I think that, yeah, it's been great while it lasted, but what happens inevitably in all walks of life, Brian, is whoever you're playing will work it out. They'll work it out, and that's what's happened. So the defensive game has worked out this approach, right, that Brendan, you know, kind of dug his heels in and was very stubborn with not changing. But the defensive teams had figured it out. And I think that last season it was very interesting that barring one particular game, some of our best performances were in Europe, where we were playing teams of a different ilk, a different style, right? Even though they were better quality sides, Brian, we seemed to express ourselves a bit better, and our style was suited better to that type of football. So I think what Martin O'Neill's brought in, it's not necessarily to say that, modern football's rubbish, let's tear it up. I know he's not a fan of XG. He spoke about that fairly recently. But I think what he has done is he's got back to something of the basics. Something of the basics where it's about, let's make sure we're progressing the ball rather than possessing the ball. And when you compare the possession stats the other night to what, on average, it's been over the last couple of seasons, we had less possession, but we had far more chances, and it was far better to watch. And sometimes I think we always talk about the chaos factor, don't we? Create a bit of chaos. Flight the ball in, as Ralston did. Someone win it, as Negrin did. And then someone finish it. And sometimes football can be as simple as that.
Well, the thing about it is, like, there's always a lot of talk about systems and styles and formations and stuff like that. And I actually think that a lot of it gets sort of... I think that there's a lot of individual parts of that, but I think people sort of lump it together. Like, I think people think a 4-3-3 is a system of play, or a style of play, instead of just a formation. Like, for instance, I think the enjoyable things for me are fast-paced football and aggressive football. So whether that's a 4-4-2, 3-5-2, 4-3-3, if it's played with intensity and passion and tackling and running and fighting and getting it into the box, I'm happy with that. Ange played some of the best football I've seen at Celtic. And
Agreed.
It was very much a system, but it wasn't a system based on his formation. It was a system based on the desire to attack quickly, move the ball quickly, be relentless, just make them chase you the whole game, never stopping, to paraphrase him. Martin Neil's not going to play the same style in terms of the formation or the shape or the overuse of passing, but what he's going to do is be aggressive, be strong, be fast-paced, be creating chances. That's fine. That's basically the same thing done differently. Rodgers was more possession-based, but again, that would have worked, and it had worked when it's faster, when it's quicker, when it's aggressive. But that's slowing down the game, controlling the game. That's fine in Europe because you're playing against better people and you want to try and have a method of control. But to your point, you don't need to do that in Scotland, so you should be able to change it up and just be as aggressive as you want. So I think sometimes, like, people say, "Oh, keepers shouldn't pass it to the back anymore, that's done." And it's like, well, it depends. And it depends who you're playing. It depends what the way you want to play. Like, I think there's a real tendency in life, as in football, for people to want to pick a side and say, this is the way you play. Just get it in the box. Just win games. It doesn't matter how you play. Other people say, no, it has to be a style. We have to have a style of play. Both things can be true.
Yep.
Like most things, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And if you're winning games and you're doing it with a bit of flair and a bit of fight and a bit of passion, I think that's all right. That's kind of how I see it. If I see a Celtic player, I want them to be playing fast, be attacking, be aggressive. Like, one of the big things I noticed, and I don't know if it's a Martin O'Neill factor or if it's a lack of Brendan Rodgers factor, but if them two players get tackled and the players, 4 or 5 players run, a bit of aggression, a bit of fight sticking up for each other, you very rarely see that under Rodgers because he likes to want to be cool and calm and collected. That's fine. I like when they get a bit uppity. I like when players are defending each other. I like when they're being aggressive like that. You don't want thugs in your team, but you want people to go, if we try and get naughty with one of them, we're getting naughty with them all. So I like to see things like that. So style of play, formations are kind of secondary to me, if I'm really honest, because I think that it's the passion, the tempo, the intent is more important for me.
You almost sounded like John Collins for a second there.
Scanning. Listen, I wish he'd his 6, but I wish he'd his shape, to be fair, John, even at his age, or a portion of his football ability.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of good points coming in, and I'm going to bring as many of them into the discussion as I possibly can. But on the point of Chris McCart that I made, I had heard, obviously, that the change being Chris McCart being replaced by Stevie Hamill. What I've heard in the last couple of days is that McCart has left the building. Stephen Ray says that he's still in the building. No official words on McCart leaving. Stevie Hammond taking over, I think, says Bobby Sutherland. That's what I've been hearing also. And we have end of season. I think it was said that Stevie Hammond's getting promoted. Yeah, still listed at head of academy. Right, so let me have a wee look at this then. So we had a video yesterday on Celtic's official YouTube channel. Not from Dermot, from the Barrafield Training Complex. So I haven't looked at it. I'm aware it's there. Let's have a look. Can everybody see that? You see that, Brian? So there's the training. There's the training video, right? The training ground video. So what we can do here, I won't play the sound. It's a visit up to Celtic Park. It's Barrafield, right? So there we go. And there's loads of people there. Training. There's Matthew, the presenter. I would suggest at this point, right, that this is a massive opening of the doors, if you like, Brian, to the new training academy. We're filming it. It's going out in the official YouTube channel. And it looks as though there's some influencers involved here, because I did see Bems, Big Bems is involved in this, right? And there's a lot of people you can see in the background that are filming it that don't appear to be like on the right-hand side. They look like mainstream media guys, because you couldn't afford that camera otherwise. And yeah, there's the kids playing. There's the Bricky. The reason I'm doing this is you would be talking to the head of the academy, right? So you would be talking about the head of the academy. So we talked to the club captain. Will we see Chris McCart at any point in this video? Because if not, I think it feeds into what I've been hearing, and that he's no longer here, because there's Jamesy Forrest. So we're talking to academy graduates, aren't we? Tony Ralston, Carl McGregor, Jamesy Forrest. There's loads of kids playing football. There's Tony. There was a Bems involvement in one of the shorts that hit the socials. So there's influencers being asked to go up there. We're talking obviously to some of the women's players, because they're going to be using the facility as well, Brian. But absolutely, look, there's a wee look behind the scenes to the gym area, but nothing from the head of the academy. Nothing. You would have thought a wee introduction to Chris McCart, what his role is, etc., might have been fitting of a video of that type, and it's not happened. So who knows? And even if it has happened, who knows if it's going to be confirmed and announced on the official channels. Big Red says, give a shout out to Maloney. Let's talk about wee Sean. No disrespect to anybody who's the same height as him, Brian. A wee bit unfair to give Martin all the praise. Yeah, I think it's a partnership for sure. I've seen pictures this morning of Martin O'Neill on the training pitch. I think Chris Sutton, who I'll be talking to tonight, John Hartson, Alan Thompson, etc., said that Friday, it was his domain on a Friday. You wouldn't see him all week, and he would be there on a Friday, obviously, to, just make sure everybody is doing exactly what he would expect. And preparation also, that presence and preparation, just to get everybody focused for the weekend's game. So Martin O'Neill was on the training pitch, but generally speaking, it's going to be Sean Maloney. Last week, I'm talking about Sean Maloney as the pathway manager, Brian. And we touched on this because the reports I was getting were that he was doing really, really well in that role. Fantastic job. He's really changed things. He's torn it up. And he's really engaging with the families, the parents of the players who are involved in the youth academy. So I'm thinking, that's brilliant. But it was always an unusual one when he came in. I mean, we said it at the time, it's not with hindsight, Brian, in that role. So that's a fairly new role at Celtic. Darren O'Neill was the first guy ever to be given it. It was seen as progressive thinking. I think that's true. There was no pathway. We had to get somebody to look at that. But Sean Maloney coming into this, beyond managerial positions at Hibs and Wigan, if you look at his coaching career, if you look at the work that he did with the Belgian national side when they were ranked number one in the world, that means he has coached at an elite level. Folk don't like that word elite, Brian, especially now that Brendan's been emptied. Nobody likes to use the word elite. But he has worked at the elite level. You don't get higher than being ranked number one in the world. So we found it quite unusual at the time, didn't we, Brian? Is it just a coincidence now that he is now part of the first team? Or was that always his pathway? Maybe a wee bit quicker than we expected as a club?
I suspect that, I mean, if you look at the sort of the boot room mentality at Celtic, you tend to find that players come in, or ex-players, a lot of them come in, and guys have been there and they do well and they sort of move around roles. But judging by his comments, I feel like he seems like he's probably quite enjoying the pathway role. And I think that actually, I mean, I don't know what the guy's passions is, I don't know him personally, obviously. But it may be the case that he might think, well, do you know what? I was an academy guy, came through, let's do enough to make this work. What my hope for Maloney is that, because I agree with the commenter there, but he does deserve credit and fair play. And I loved him as a player. I thought he was excellent. Sean, wee shug. I loved him as a player. And what you spoke earlier about maybe potential backroom changes and changes at corporate level and stuff like that. And one of the things that I really hope is that between Tisdale and Maloney, pathway manager, sporting director, that we can get guys coming through. To your point, and, even if it's, I always say, why not give somebody the last 10 minutes of a game you're winning 3-0? Like, just give them that bit of exposure, try and get them into the team. Like, one of the things that always annoyed me actually under Rodgers was a lot of the players that left, a lot of his concerns was they're not physically at the level, they're not fit enough, they're not strong enough, they're not living the life the right way, they've not got the right nutrition, whatever these. I think Daniel Cummings was one of the ones he highlighted as being in the right shape. And you think, well, why? Surely you can fix that. Surely if the requisite is, listen, if you want to play for us, this is what you need to run like, train like, live like, this is the muscle you need to put in the gym, this is how you need to develop physically. So if we've not had that at the academy level and there's that disconnect, then I can understand why Chris McCart's away and a guy like Sean Maloney has come in. And what you just hope for the future is it progresses. One of the things, though, that has always been a bugbear for me, and I think people think I've got money invested in the boy, but when we, at the Hearts game, obviously Donovan and Murray didn't have a great game. Murray in particular had a bit of a nightmare. But I thought the pylon was outrageous. Like, he'd a bit of a shocker. But he'd hardly played. And he's surrounded by senior players who never helped. And I think if you're a young guy coming in, and like Donovan, they're going to have to be allowed to make mistakes. Right? It's incumbent on the manager to go, right, listen, he's having a shocker, let's move in position, give him some protection, or take him off for his own good. I think it's really unfair, but it was the same with James Forrest for years. He's never got the credit he deserves, in my opinion, because he was homegrown, I think. And I just think we've got a tendency at times to be a bit too hard on the youngsters coming in. And we're very quick to sort of throw them under the bus. I mean, look at Ralston. Anytime Ralston has a remotely no decent game, he should never be near the squad again. He's rotten. And look, he's not the best player in the world. But I think we tend to give the younger guys much harder times, or the academy guys much harder times than some of the internationals. Like Casper Schmeichel's had a couple of howlers this season, so's Carter Vickers, and they've had nowhere near the criticism that a Dane Murray, a Donovan, a Ralston, a Forrest will get. And I just think that, and I do understand it as well, to be fair, because if you wear that jersey, you do deserve the same criticism as everybody else. I understand that, but I just think there has to be some sort of, I suppose, leeway when because if you're going to give younger players the time to come in and develop, you're going to have to accept they're going to make mistakes. It has to be the manager or the players running about that sort of shield them and help them and protect them. And I think that was missing a bit. I know people are commenting saying Murray's 22, is no youngster. I get that, right? But he's also had about 2 and a bit years missing his career.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively speaking, he's no very experienced. He's not played a lot. And again, he might not be a long-term answer. Donovan might not be good enough. But unless you give them the chance to fail, you're not going to know. And I just think we tend to write them off too quickly compared to some of the first team guys, in my opinion.
It's strange. The one I always remember is Peter Grant. I always felt Peter Grant was on a short leash, no matter what. And this is a guy who is just a few games shy of 500 competitive appearances for Celtic. And he always got stick, Brian. And I don't know if it was because he would take players for granted that come through the system. I'm going to bring in some more comments. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Starting off with Bobby's comment here, Rodgers wasted £40 million. I've heard a lot of this kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do, right, I'm going to challenge it, Bobby. None personally, it's just that I've actually heard this quite a bit. I don't think he wasted £40 million last season. So let's have a wee look and see exactly what happened last season. So we've got a couple of graphics here. The first one is players out. So when you look at that, this is all in euros, by the way. You've got to take into account the amount of money we brought in, because despite what Chris Boyd said, the net does matter, right? So when you're looking at players like Bernabe, Kyogo, Matt O'Reilly, Mickey Johnson, another one who falls into the category you were talking about just a second ago, Brian. But we also made money on guys like and we got a transfer fee for Haksabanovic. We actually got money for Iwata and Kobayashi and Siegrist, but we don't know a couple of the transfer fees. And in total, we brought in 56.18 million euros, right? So that's your starting point. Then you look at what we put out, and obviously Annie Engels is the big one, £11 million. You've got Jota, unfortunately injured far too quickly, Adam Ida and Trusty, they're the biggies. We've also got Bernardo and Luke McCowan and Sinisalo for fairly nominal fees, right? And you look at how much we spent versus how much we brought in, and then you get a sense of the fact that we were up quite a bit on the net profit. So you can look at it from that perspective and say, right, it's not as if he's put us under any kind of financial stress by going out and splashing the cash. For the three players that constantly get mentioned, Ida, Trusty and Engels, that was your Matt O'Reilly money. We sold Matt O'Reilly, we brought in three, and we strengthened the squad. You can agree or disagree on an individual basis about the players, but we won the double and we progressed in the Champions League, Brian. So I think in terms of the team, that move, for me, that worked. That move worked. And I think that if you move into this pre-season, right, and I think I said this during the week or at the beginning of this week, it's been a long week. It's been normalised now that we do sell star players. We do it. We average 2 a season. I mean, that one there that I've just shown you, it was Matt O'Reilly and Kyogo. We average 2 big players a season, right? We cash in on the assets. So I think this season, the 2 big players were Kuhn and it would have been Maeda. We all know that that didn't happen. But what would have happened had we sold Kuhn and Maeda? And I think I would be confident to suggest that we would get 30 million plus for those 2 players. We know we got 17 for Kuhn. I think the chat was 15 for Maeda, so 32 million quid, right? You bring that in. If we were to go out and not just use the Matt O'Reilly money to buy 3 players, but to use those 2 players to bring in 3 or 4 players and go again, as we did last season, I think we would have been in a better position. What we did is we reverted back to Brendan Rodgers' transfer window number 1, and we brought in bodies. So it was more for me quantity over quality. Now, there's some players in there, Brian, and I think Nygren has to be in that bracket, who have contributed and who do look as though they're going to be Celtic players. Tuneke looks like he's going to be a Celtic player, right? It looks as though he is contributing, and he's... The other night, it was great to see him getting back to that form because he had kind of gone off the boil a wee bit after his initial couple of games. So I don't buy that he's kind of like thrown 40 million quid or even spent 40 million. I don't get it because you've got to look at the net. And not only that, Brian, you've got to look at the result of that investment. And the result was a double, should have been a treble, and 10 games in the Champions League. First time we've ever played 10 games in the Champions League, I believe. Somebody could maybe correct me wrong. But 10 games in the Champions League. So for me, he's not wasted that money. And this isn't me saying he shouldn't have been sacked or he shouldn't have walked. That's happened when we're moving on from that. But I don't think that would be fair to say that. I think the issue is, of the 3 seasons that he's been back, that one season was the one where we got it right.
I totally agree. I don't... people talk a lot about like waste of money and stuff like that. You could argue Celtic have wasted far more than 40 million on players who haven't contributed, as opposed to the couple of players that they paid it for that have. And I think, yeah, we had a great run in the Champions League, which made us a lot of money. Not just getting in there, obviously, the wins, the minimum generated, won the double, as you say, had every opportunity to make even more money this year if we'd invested properly again. So I think saying we threw this money away and stuff, I think it's not really accurate. To be honest, I think it's kind of short-sighted. And then I suppose then the question becomes, well, if we want to trust the manager, is a suggestion then for Bobby that we don't ever spend 40 million, or that we don't allow the manager to pick the players? Because I don't really get the point of that. It's the point that Rodgers kind of sign a player and you go, right, okay, well, Rodgers isn't here anymore, so what do we do now? Do we never trust the manager again? Or do we not invest the money again? I don't really see the point he's making. And I also, in the offence, by the way, Bob, I'm not having a pop, but I also don't agree that it was a waste of money either. I think that these things need to be sort of, to your point, looked at over the course, like what is the net result of that investment? Mm-hmm. and then you don't know what money we're going to make back off the players to offset any potential loss anyway. So it could be the case that we make up, and then even if we paid less for those players, we wouldn't have spent any more. So it'd just be more money sitting in the bank, no doing anything, no investing in the squad anyway. So I'm not really sure the point. And just on points being misunderstood, by the way, for the commenters, most of them are very respectful. For the ones that can't make a comment without being rude, I don't think Murray's the answer. I don't even know if Donovan's the answer. The point isn't that they were great. The point is that if we're going to have youth players in, they need to be allowed to make mistakes. Murray had a shocker. I don't think it's going to be the answer. I don't even know if he'll be here next season. It's not about the individual player. It's about allowing youngsters to get a chance. And the wider point that our academy players get more grief, in my opinion, than the first team players who, to Bobby's point, we're paying loads of money for. So I think if you need to judge it all on an even playing field. So if you're going to criticise, say Murray, for example, again on that game, fine. But he's rubbish. He should never play again because of one game when Trusty, Scales, Carter Vickers, Casper, Callum, Tati have all had shockers over several games. I think that's my point. So it's not that him himself is particularly good. So just a wee point for the people that can't have a conversation with it being cheeky.
Listen, Brian, that is online. That and I've got a theory on this, right? See, when we all started using the internet where it was all like dial-up, you could actually hear it. I can almost hear it was like a ZX Spectrum dialing up, right? And we all started doing that kind of stuff, and it was like all these websites were bizarre. They were all homemade websites, weren't they? And whatever your interest was, you could find something, and some collector or Anorak had built a website on it. That was then. So we were learning how to use online services, and it was services. It was online shopping. It was watching a movie, then judging it on IMDb, having a purchase on eBay, then judging it with the rating of that particular seller, or Amazon, and then judging it, going to a hotel, judging it. Everything was rated and everything had a star, Brian, right? And then social media come in. And then that person on the screen, I'll just judge that as well because I'm used to just judging everything online. Therefore, social media, I think, came at a point where everybody was also, they'd already learned, and they'll never unlearn now that it's all right just to judge that thing on the screen. So that thing could be you, or it could be a toilet plunger, Brian, and there's no differentiation. They'll judge it 5-star, 1-star, half a star, and it gets a bit brutal at times, the troll.
Mike Tyson said that. Mike Tyson said social media has now made people, he says, what was it, I can't remember the exact quote. It was basically like, it's now a world full of people that have never been punched in the face because
I know.
The way they talk behind a fake name and a fake profile picture isn't the way they would talk to somebody in real life.
The way I look at it, Brian, is we control the tone of the community that's been built on Acsom, and I think, generally speaking, it's very respectful. Most people.
90% are absolute diamonds. Like the comments, generally speaking, even they disagree, which is often. It's just when you see these things, and you think, actually the rudeness I can live with if they've listened to the point. That's what always blows my mind. But I think we're kind of going off tangent a little bit. But I think sometimes we see that, and as football fans as well, and generally everything's either the best thing or the worst thing, or you support the board or you support Brendan or this or that. Or, do you know what I mean? There's a lot of nuance gets lost. But I say for the most part, people are good.
But again, you make a point. I support Celtic, and I support whatever is good for Celtic. And if something's damaging Celtic in any way, shape, or form, then I'll call it out. And that's always been my mantra when it comes to supporting Celtic. So the board are an aspect of the football club. The football club's at the core. The board's something that will come and go. All the players will come and go. The manager will come and go. The football club remains, and the only constant, of course, is the fans as well. We've got here John Watt selling all the family silver. We are running out. John, the important thing is if you've got a recruitment system and it's working properly, everything's on a cycle. So selling it isn't the problem. It's the fact that you should have had somebody in 2 or 3 windows before who's ready to take over the mantle. And that's the issue. I think we've been selling too much without the replacement of the quality, Brian. I think that's been the big issue.
We'll see on your point earlier, Paul, and I meant to pick it up. It wasn't, see my issue with the transfer window and recruitment generally. I don't really care the money we're spending, right? Because if you spend it right, it doesn't matter what you spend, right? And if your recruitment model's fine, the money you spend justifies it. The problem for me is we don't sign players in the positions we need them. So it's just simple. Like, you've said Kuhn and Keel go left, and you don't sign a right winger or a striker.
Mm-hmm.
You go, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's madness. Do you know what? Like, it's things like that. You don't sign any cover for Callum McGregor, but you sign another midfielder that we maybe don't need when you've got Bernardo sitting there. It's just like, either have them or sell them. Like, have a couple of players for every position, and if you sell one, recruit one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like, and obviously I'm oversimplifying it, right? It's obviously more complex than I'm clever enough to understand, but I don't really
No, but it's all about simplifying it, Brian. That was what was good about Wednesday night. Martin O'Neill simplified it on Wednesday night.
I just get the ball forward. And a startling revelation, troops, for everybody. It turns out that if you're traditionally a left winger, you can just play on the other side.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
What about a left centre back though? Can he play on the right as centre back?
Oh, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's things like that. We've got in this, and it goes back to your thing about shapes and formations and styles earlier. I said when it was you and Quinny and I on, and I said, if you're playing fives, and I say, Paul, jump to the right wing, you're not going to go, what right wing? What did I do? I don't know what to do. You might be rotten there, but you know what you're supposed to do. And I just think, like, we've got to this point where, do you think players can't just change a formation or change a position or adapt is sort of madness, it's excuse making. And I did see one of the things as well you mentioned about Rodgers leaving. I do think it was the right time for him to go, by the way. Like, people on this know I've never been a huge Rodgers guy, particularly. I didn't really want him back in the second term. I kind of suspected it wouldn't work, to be honest, just purely because of the personalities involved. So I'm not hugely sorry to see him go, if I'm honest. I think the manner of it, as we touched on, is deplorable in terms of how they've dealt with it. But I think just in terms of the football side of things, I think it's probably the right way to go, because his comments when he took Tonetti off against Hearts, and he says, why did you just move him right? He says, because he's a left winger, can't play right. What are you talking about? That's madness. There you go. Would you play Tonetti on the right? Of course. Like,
the point was floated last week because he had been playing there for Tunisia. So he returns to the Tunisian national team and he played in the right wing. So we had spoken about this last week, Brian. And then somebody asks the question, but he was quite defensive, I think. And he was also the same when he was asked about playing Murray there instead of Trusty. And it's sort of to do with what foot is your strongest. But again, I think defensively, fullback might be a wee bit more difficult, although I've heard Sirachi can play right back and left back. I mean, that's a skill. Danny McGrain, could do that. Not every fullback can do that because, when you're bombing up that wing, you're doing so at pace and it's on your strong foot, isn't it? And you're hoping to, unless you cut inside, whip a ball in at some point on your strong foot. So fullbacks are different, I think. But centre-backs, when you're doing your defending, obviously, with regards to Wednesday, a lot of that was aerial duels. But slide tackles, doesn't matter what leg's your strongest. It really doesn't matter. It's all about passing and controlling the ball. And I think that Trusty done the simple thing on Wednesday night, and he had a good game as a result of that.
Well, that's where he has good games, whenever he has to just do the simple things. Whenever he has to defend, that's what he does well.
Somebody said the other day, he's a Martin O'Neill defender. Would you subscribe to that?
I think so. Tall, strong, powerful, clear the ball, get to somebody that can play. That's what he used to say to Big Bobo, wasn't it? Just get a football player.
Absolutely. Valharan. Even Mialby, who obviously started off as a midfielder. I'm keen to get some of these in because obviously the next big one, Brian, because you hardly get time to compose yourself and there's another game to look at, is Sunday against Rangers. Now, a Celtic State of Mind for these big games that are tough to get tickets for. We run fan zones for anybody who can't get a ticket but wants to be in among Celtic supporters. We've got the game on the big screen. You get free pies, live music, and Acsom on a stage. What else would you like? Barazat and Design. You do have to book tickets, although it is free. Just visit the BAD website. There's a booking page. Get your seat. Come along on Sunday and say hello. Welsh is the ref. I was just looking at this yesterday. So we've got Nick Walsh, no Welsh. Nick Walsh, I think Stephen Welsh. He's in Millerville. Nick Walsh is the referee. And he's ably assisted by Daniel McFarlane and Francis Connor. We've also got VAR, Stephen McLean and Andrew Dallas. Shocking VAR decision the other night, Hearts versus St Mirren, I've got to say. But that is your officials for the game on Sunday. Sriracha put a lot into the game against Falkirk, says Robert. I think Tierney will start. I'm going to get Brian's thoughts on a starting 11 in just a second. And FGC says, Peter Grant, I went to every game in the 80s. Trust me, Grant was no better than average. All this blessing himself doesn't make him a player. But I'll tell you one thing, respected by his teammates, played under various managers. Obviously, he got his debut under Davy Hay. Then he had Billy McNeil's second tenure. Then, obviously, moving into the more forgettable days. Wim Jansen offered him a contract. He played one game under Wim, by the way. And he did offer him a contract, but he was brutally honest with him and told him he wouldn't play many games. But he wanted him there for the experience and that core group we were talking about, Brian, of guys who have come through the system. So he plays one game in that season, wearing the Everett Larsson Umbro top that you'll remember. And then he left the football club at that point. But if he'd stayed, it would have been great to see Granty as part of that team that stopped the 10. M. Young, we were right to sell Kuhn. I agree with you on this. Yeah. This error wasn't to not replace him. But I also agree with something Chris Sutton said at the time. Keep him for the 2 games against Kairat. The money's there. The offer will still be there. Keep him for those 2 games, get through, and then sell him.
Well, especially if he scores and gets you into Champions League, you won't get enough money for him. It didn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense whatsoever. Michael Riley, folk were talking about Maloney being nervous. So what? Everyone is allowed to have nerves at an interview. I think that's the point. I think he's a coach, Michael. I don't think he needs to be that guy front and centre, doing the pressers, all that stuff. And some brilliant coaches don't do that side of the game that well. So I'm all right with that because that's not part of his role. Martin O'Neill can do all that stuff. And if Maloney remains, and again, this might affect who actually takes the job because a lot of them want to bring their own coaching staff, then I think he just needs to have that strong manager and they can complement each other. I'm a tutor and proud of it. Me too, Jezebel. God bless the tutors. And by the way, I didn't realise I was a tutor until I did Acsom, and then people started calling me a tutor. I thought a tutor was somebody that lived way, way up north. I'm only in Fife. It's only a 1 hour drive for Glasgow. It's only 1 hour drive from civilization.
You shouldn't believe it if they call you on Acsom, Paul.
Right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. Don't take what they say. Don't believe everything you read.
I don't believe it all, and I would suggest to anybody who read about me online not to believe everything you read. Laurie Gallagher, delighted to see Martin back, regardless of how long he's here for. You know how much I love the man, a total gent, and the guy who made it all happen for my generation as well. And it has given me a bit of a bounce. The one complaint I've had, the one big complaint, listen, I've made it pretty clear I was a Brendan Rodgers fan, absolutely. But I'm not blind to how Celtic were playing, Brian. I'm not blind to there being a real kind of mood in the camp. Absolutely. And if it was time to go, it was time to go. You don't argue with that. It was just the manner of everything that came after it. I'm looking for a predicted 11 from you, Brian. And if there's any shocks, explain yourself, young man.
I don't think there'll be any shocks. Usually my predictions are widely off the mark, but I think you Casper again in goals. I think Sriracha will play again. I think you play it right. Drop Ralston. Trusty Scales Tierney. Was that right in saying, I know it was advertised as a 4-3, but it looked like Engels played deeper with McGregor and Negram was right up as a 10, which seemed to work a lot better. So I suspect that'll be the same 3 again. Tenecchia out left. I would love Forrest to start because I thought he was very good, but I don't know if he was starting after playing most of the game the other night. So I suspect Maeda will probably start outright and Kenny up front because I don't see him changing Kenny after he's just scored 2 goals. I just don't get that impression. And I thought he done well, actually, to be fair to him, after a hard game against Hearts. So I would like Forrest to start, but I think probably Maeda will start and Forrest will come on. So I thought he was very good. But Sriracha, really impressed. He was everywhere and just it's a lot pacier than I thought, actually. Like, he seemed to be all over the place, and that chaos factor, like, people didn't really know how to handle him. And I liked that. I thought it was good. So I suspect you'll see him at right back.
Well, my team would be the same team that started against Falkirk, except for James Forrest for Maeda. Maeda fit, play him. In these types of games, Forrest is going to be a brilliant weapon to bring on with 30 minutes to go, Brian. So that's the only change I would make. I would keep Tony Ralston, no because I'm blinded by the man, but I would keep him, and that would mean that Kieran Tierney's on the bench for me if he's fit. He'd be on the bench, so that would be very interesting to see that as well. I'm looking forward to Sunday. I'm also looking forward to tonight. So I'll be in Greenock. I love a wee drive to Greenock. CSC, it is effectively sold out, but officially there's still 3 tickets. So if you want to come along, the ticket link is underneath the video. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. And once again, thank you, Brian Degnan, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.